There's broadcasting, but it's dead. Some went to Florida, some went to Eugene. True. Some went to the Southwest.
We're here.
So where shall we start? There's some ideas. Phil, yeah.
I have a problem with the sadhana for Chenrezig.
A problem.
I kind of like the,
That's a problem.
We're going to go with that.
I like to do my visualizations slowly and carefully, and particularly with Hri, I kind of like to develop Hri and go through the,
Yeah.
the radiance and radiance coming back and process of that transforming into Chenrezig. But the sadhana just has like 3 words for Hri. It bugs me.
What are the 3 words for Hri?
Well, where is it? In the, it just says, like, and then Hri transforms into Chenrezig, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, I wonder
Didn't even
how-
announce itself first.
Yeah, no proper
Page
introduction.
12. Page 12.
And it's already gone. And I think, hey, wait, I'm not there yet.
This
Yeah.
must be
So
wrong.
how do you deal
This
with
must
that?
be wrong.
And really, I have to say that's why I don't come Wednesday evening. Well, I prefer to do
It's too
Chenrezig at
fast.
home. I can do it at my own pace, in my own way. And I don't like the sadhana. So
You
what
don't
do I
like
do
it?
about that? No, I don't, for that very reason.
Do you like the practice?
Yes, I love the practice.
Oh, we could say so many things about that.
Well, you better get started.
Because we don't have much time. Go fast.
So one thing is there just 1 or 2 places?
Well, I suppose so, yeah. Yeah. But maybe it's that larger issue of just wanting to do it my way, my own
Well,
pace.
that's always there, of course.
And
But that doesn't mean that you
being
shouldn't. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it your own way. If you practice at home alone, to some degree, you'll do it your own way. It's like you can't help. You're doing it, so it's what it is. And following too close to the formula is a problem, because then we think we've done the practice just because we followed the formula. So that's an issue. There's so the point at which the Hri appears, that sounds like what you were referencing before, right?
Yes.
It's like it's appearing too fast.
Yeah, comes and goes, like literally in 3 English words.
Well, why do you say it goes? What's the? You mean because
Well,
it
then we
becomes
moved on to
Chenrezig?
Chenrezig.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't have it in front of me, or I read those words. But
Yeah, it's okay. I think the issue isn't, the issue actually is not,
yeah, from the Hui appears the noble Chenrezi, that's it.
right, right. I think the issue is actually not the speed. Like, you could do it at any speed when you're home alone.
Mhm.
When you're in a group, of course, there you are. It's going by, so your options are fewer than when you're alone. But still, there's a reason for it being quicker. It isn't just completely accidental that somebody wanted it to be really fast. But but I think when you're doing it alone, you can do it fast or slow. There's a way in the practice of Chenrezi and Green Tara, which would be the two that personally I've witnessed the most inside of a group of Tibetans engaging in those practices. They tend to say things so fast that of course you have to be really practiced even to just get your lips to move that fast. But even then you got to be really practiced at the language in order to understand what you're saying. And so right there you've eliminated 98% of everybody to some degree. And there's a group benefit to doing it in addition to the benefit that comes from doing it alone. So I think that's a piece of it too, is that you're meditating with a group of people and they're setting a certain pace. And that pace, well, let me finish what I was going to say about the Tibetan group. Their basis for finishing the practice fast, where you settle the mind in its natural state. It's not meant to be just calm abiding. It's meant to be like settle the mind in its natural state. And they sit there for like 1 to 3 seconds, and then it's like, it's done. And I always had the feeling like, I want to sit here for 5 minutes. And I think I really didn't believe the explanation, which was, your mind's too busy anyway. It's like, why are you just going to sit there and look at all sorts of stuff that goes by? So why do that? And it took me 10 years, at least, maybe 15, to actually get that. Moving through the practice quickly has a certain advantage, and that is that you don't have time to think about it. You just develop the skill of making the thing happen, and because you didn't stay with it and wander around it and wonder what color you should paint it and all these things, that you got something that you didn't have before, and then you saw, oh, I see. And what I saw is that going down and practicing shamatha was not difficult. Coming to the end of Chenrezi and settling into the nature of mind was extremely difficult. But the best shot was the shot that was short. In other words, almost like, I know where I'm going, it's just like that, and then you're finished. And what I found is that you were more likely to actually have the experience you were meant to have in that short period than if it was doubled or tripled or made much longer. You just got more time to like graze on your own distractions, really. So that said, in no way am I a proponent of always doing it fast, because I think that there's another two things here. One is you really need to have the experience with confidence that you actually did. It looks like, at least, feels like, I actually did settle in the nature of mind. Okay, it was 2 seconds, but something in that 2 seconds was different than other 2 seconds. And I think you need to mix that with longer periods so that you get both. Like, oh, I see, I can sit for 5 minutes, it doesn't get better. And 10 minutes seems to even get worse. So there's just an interesting conundrum there. I think the Tibetans, when they're alone, do it really fast. Da 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 da, and then they're off. Personally, I think mixing the two is really helpful. But you're talking about something else. You're talking about the starting point, the actual visualization of Chenrezig out of the Hri.
Yeah, but it applies to what you're describing too, and I can see some sense to that.
Kind of.
Too. I mean, at my own pace, I need to explore that,
Yeah.
and then once I get it in some way,
I think
it's
as
like you can read War and Peace and get all the characters and all the plot and everything else, and then you come back and somebody says, you know, and Vronsky did that, and you got it because you already did the reading.
Yeah.
You know, you did your homework. You know what the sequence is and what it's supposed to feel like, and so then I think I could telescope it once I've done it 100 times, you know, and 1,000 times. Gotten all the pieces.
you
then
get facile
I
with
could
it.
put them together more quickly in a more
I think
facile
you
way.
get facile with it. And there's another piece with the Hri, of course, where I think it's a case could be made that it's important to do that quickly, as opposed to the same case couldn't be made for it's important to finish quickly. But in the coming out of the Hri to Chenrezig, you put the Hri there. That was actually the work. That was it. That is the nature of mind. And so there, in one sense, aside from the sadhana, there isn't anything else to do. Like if you could stay with that, but we can't. And so what we do is we witness the transformation. Really, no transformation from the Hri to Chenrezig, and then Chenrezig holds is the nature of mind. But so was the Hri. So was your form as Phil. So was everything else, and you could, in some way, condense the practice down to a simple statement that everything you do is about discovering the nature of mind. That's the path. So whether you do it slow or fast, it's still the same. It's still the same puzzle. And whether you sit in shamatha, which we used to like kind of jokingly call it, when somebody would say, I really like to be in shamatha for like 10 minutes. Then we'd refer to that person as a shamatha wallower. And they'd wallow in the shamatha. Actually, what they would do is they'd wallow in their distractions, right? And then call that their meditation session, which was okay because we all did it. But but that's why it was okay, because we were all doing it. There's something to ponder in there. If you take the three wisdoms and you see how the practice is done, and you do it, and you study a little more and contemplate, and you do it, study a little more and contemplate, and it gets more clear and more clear, then some of these things become experientially clear. Like, I can see why you would do that fast. I could also see why you would do it slow.
Well, as long as I feel like there is some wisdom there, and it just didn't. It
Yeah.
wasn't just sort of
No, I don't think.
some wise man spit it out like that.
You can't be sure that that's not what happened.
Somebody must like it that way.
And he was wise.
Bill Zola.
I think what you said about the dissolution is completely apropos for the appearance as well. In many, many sadhanas, there's a little thing that goes along with the dissolution. So no meditation, no fabrication, no distraction.
Yeah, salmon mouth.
Yes. Yeah. So there's something about just meeting it. Is in the just meeting is where it happens, and the notion that we would try to sustain it is immediately fabrication.
Or work our way into it.
Or kind of get everything. We want to move all the furniture in the living
That's
room
me.
so it gets nice and comfy, and then we'll settle into it, which is also going to be kind of, well, I have this idea what it's going to be, but it's in this meeting, and if when the Cree appears, yes, it does take some time to actually, we're going to actually use the full form of the Cree. We actually do have to really study, work with it, repeatedly write it over and over and over again till it's really kind of, it just comes up like the letter A. So you think A, and it's kind of immediately appear in your mind. And in the same way, Cree can appear like that. And there's nothing, to the extent that we could say our entire experience is fabricated in some way, but it appears moment to moment. And in the same way, Cree can appear just like that. And we don't need to move all the furniture to make sure that our Cree is just a little too long, a little too this, a little too... Just as it appears, it's there. And so there are some things that we can do at that point of transition between the refuge and bodhicitta and the Cree appearing there, but they're also quite compressed. But so it's no need to add anything there. But it's mainly just witnessing something. And in this case, until we really feel like the Cree actually will kind of just appear just the way any other appearance that we're familiar with would just come to mind instantly. Just use a point of light. And that takes a little while to get used to too, but we're not used to that.
Yeah.
But just that kind of the instantaneousness of the appearance. The less we try to fix, and we're into kind of reshaping, standing back, with our goatee and our beret, and the less we get involved in that during the practice, the better.
Thanks, that's helpful.
So even if we think, all I can see is sort of some fuzzy Cree, not good enough.
Looks a lot like a 5.
Yeah, it looks like it doesn't. It's like that was it. That was it. It's actually no different. Honing our mind and investing the effort in order to actually really bring that form clearly to mind has some benefit, and that's worth investing in. But however it appears in that instant, that's it. I had an experience riding back on the MAX train from the airport once, sitting behind a couple of guys, and one of them clearly was like really good at rap, and his friend at rap.
Oh, rap.
And his friend, like wanted him to do this thing because he was so good at it, and he just started flying through this recitation with it, just the rhythm, just like that. And I thought, I could never do that. And then I thought, wait a second, I can do Mahakala practice just like that, with that same kind of, with the rhythm and all that. And then something actually came together, because what I appreciated kind of at arm's length and his ability to do this with such precision, it was just something that was something like moment to moment, there was this very clear appearance. It was not distracting, it was exceptionally clear. And nothing was kind of drawn out where you kind of get into the it was like, so I thought, oh, actually I see something else in the process of doing the sadhana quickly. There's another dimension to it. And then when I started to relate to that, as opposed to, these guys in the monastery, they've got to get through 400 pages by noon, so they're just kind of going at it like demons. It's just a hurry. I thought, actually there's another dimension. But meeting things moment to moment as they arise. And staying in that kind of that freshness of the moment, without getting wrapped up in kind of the artistic criticism and the judgment and all the rest. It allows for a kind of a freedom in meeting things.
just to add to that, because on one of the Chenrezig retreats we did, we actually chanted much faster. And it was uplifting to me. And it wasn't because it kept me from thinking so much. It was more about the melody and it just gave me a different energy. So, yeah, I just experienced that. And just wonder if that's a possibility that we could try that, like on our Wednesday nights too.
Sure. You have to sign up to be homesick.
You take the seat. What was it that Lama Sangsin told you on retreat about the relationship with the chant leader and everybody else? It was something like the chant leader is supposed to do the best that they can, and then
And everybody else follows them.
No matter what.
No matter what.
Yeah.
no matter what. So
Yeah. That was psychologically one of the most difficult things. It's like,
Yeah. I wanted
you just
to
knew they were doing it wrong, and if they weren't doing it
Yeah.
wrong, they weren't doing it as good as I could do it.
or they did it better.
Oh, they did it even
And
worse.
all that is supposed to be Chenrezig.
Yeah.
So the one thing I thought of out of your question was
Yeah.
how we get these ideas about a sadhana or something, and then we get stuck on our idea, like, I don't like this, or I love this, I love this, which is equally dangerous. And having had the wonderful karma, I will say, to do Vajrasattva all in 90 days enclosed. I mean, you just do that 8-9 hours a day. You hate it, you love it, you don't care, you're hurt, everything hurts, you're in bliss. It doesn't matter. That becomes part of it.
You mean it doesn't get better?
Well, you could have moments of bliss, and you could have moments of mystery, but there's some experience of it's all. So having one thought that I might make quite solid of, I don't do this because I don't like that, is kind of funny. And I see you getting it, smiling, because it's like, what? Which day? And so the conclusion is just do it. Just do it, and try that, and try slow, and try fast, and try this, and try that. And after you're thoroughly tried, then you can say, I don't want to do this one, I'm going to do something else. Because I didn't like Vajrasattva at all. I just thought, what am I doing up here on a hill just saying these 100 syllables in languages I don't know, and I don't know what this is, and very little explanation. Just do it. And now I don't let a day go without connecting because I want to. So something happens between that and that. And it comes from doing it. And from seeing whatever our mind is telling us is just part of a story around this. Make it part of the big story. I like this part, I don't like that part. I'm never going to do this again. And then you sit down and do it again. I'm leaving. You go back to the shrine room and do it again. It just starts turning like that somehow, from just doing. So.
I'd like to think there's some kind of
Mystery.
mastery, where if you spend your 10,000 hours doing something, you become a master at it.
That is the
That's
master.
it.
The mastery is you don't anymore believe those stories. You say, oh, there's my story of I love it. There's my story of I hate it. There's my story of I'm going to run down the road. We used to call it running down the road at the monastery. Everyone got to that story many times during retreat. I'm out of here. And even start down the road. I'm out of here. Screw all of you. You're nuts. Then you get down to the stop sign and you see, you remember what you came for. It's like, oh yeah, okay, back up the road. It's just all part of it. Listen, it's not the mastery the way we do, our masters in psychology.
Come on Wednesday.
Yeah.
We'll do it really, really fast for Linda.
And really
And then we'll do
slow.
it really, really slow.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
So it's like your thing around the mastery thing is kind of grabbed me for a moment because I think that you could say reasonably well as you could say for somebody spending 12,000 hours getting a PhD. There's no guarantee that they will have really mastered it. On the other hand, the odds are much higher by virtue of spending the time. And so my mind went to the place of what is the mastery? It's like you can't do something for thousands of hours regularly and not master something. So what are you mastering? And then I thought, well, one of the things that we almost all can do if we actually put the time into it is we can see the disease. We can see ourselves like needing to talk to ourselves, needing to elaborate on this thing, needing to build a personal agenda about something where actually nobody wants us to have an agenda, for example. You can see those things. Are you a great builder of agendas? Hopefully not, because that's anathema to the practice, really. But the ability to see the drive and what drives us is mastery. So then the issue is, so what? Given what you and I have been talking about, like, how do you change the world with that? And the thing that came to mind is that if you can see your own pain, then you can at least project an assumption of that pain in others. And since you see it so well in yourself, the likelihood that you would feel compassion and loving kindness for those who feel it, and you have a sense of the needlessness of feeling it, then that affects people. And if you multiply that by 10,000, or whatever number you want to multiply it by, it could be quite a force. And the best that I can do to put an exclamation point after that is the experience that we all have when we sit down with someone who's a great meditator. And you feel their kindness and their openness and all of the things that we appreciate, and you feel their appreciation of you, which feels like it's not quite right, like it should just be my appreciation for them. But it doesn't work like that. And so then personally I get a sense of, I see how this works. I can be a hardcore cynic, which I was in the very beginning of this adventure. And it's like the tide coming in. You can't stop it. It just flows into you. So I think the analogy is not completely irrelevant or inappropriate. That there will be a kind of mastery no matter what. And the issue really is only what is it, and resulting in what benefit or lack of it for others.
I am confused about visualization that on page 12 we visualize Chenrezig on top of our head, and then in like around page on 31 or something, I guess, yeah, on page 31, somewhere around here, are we going to visualize ourselves as Chenrezig? Or is that my confusion?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so first Chenrezig is here, and then it at one point we become Chenrezig.
Yeah. So this morning we condensed that more than we normally do.
Uh-huh.
Normally we spread it out a little more and it's more clear what's happening.
Yeah.
But between page 12 and 31, there's a couple of ways in which this can happen. But between that, before your Chenrezig, you imagine that the Chenrezig's light is going out and striking all beings in all the realms, right?
Right.
And when it strikes those beings who appear as Chenrezig already, then there's a well, that's not quite true. I'm jumping ahead of my mind now. No, the light goes out. It strikes the beings. The beings are in all the different realms, from the hell realms to the God realms. And all of those realms are samsara. So Chenrezig's light purifies the causes for being born in those realms, the causes of the suffering in those realms, and they're left pretty much with the causes for engaging in things that will lead to happiness, maybe their own and others. And as you go through the realms, if you went slow, which we didn't do this morning, then there's a point at which you come to the human realm, and since you're a human, that's the point at which you become Chenrezig.
I see.
And so that's not stated in the root text that we were looking at that point so
Yeah.
clearly, but
And
that's
that light is coming from Chenrezig. That's the Chenrezig on your head.
mhm,
That the light is coming from there.
yeah,
And everybody's since everybody visualize and supposedly visualize themselves as Chenrezig on top of their head. So light from everyone's head is coming at
mhm.
the same time. That's how it works.
Or is it all the light from your own Chenrezig going out to their head?
Which is your own Chenrezig? Which Chenrezig do you own?
The one on
Which model?
on top of the head. So I followed her until she said all the Chenrezigs that you visualize, the light comes off of their Chenrezig and goes to the gut realm, right?
Yes.
Okay. So is that the way it goes?
I'm trying to see the confusion. What's the...
You don't see the confusion. Jesus,
Whether it all comes from yours or whether it's coming from
It's coming
everyone.
from everybody.
Oh, I see.
Everybody's.
I see, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So are they turning me into Chenrezig? And I'm turning them into Chenrezig? Yeah, I think it would just be the one on your head.
It's just the one on your head. Because you're not, when you start that process, you're not Chenrezig yet.
Okay.
So you have to answer the question of where's the light coming from. In fact, I gotta say that from in my experience, I can't find a difference at a certain point, depending upon whether I do it on Tuesday or Thursday or whatever, and what happened that day. This may or may not be an issue for me in my practice. In other words, it can move fairly quickly from one thing to the next, or it can go slow. And sometimes it feels like it didn't go at all. And at the end of the practice, I realize that nothing's happened. I'm still in my ordinary form, and and I should have done this, but clearly I was distracted by something. I don't even remember what the distraction was, but there it was, and so I'm just there. But generally speaking, and today was confusing because we were both doing the root text in a different way than we ordinarily do it, and then trying to fill in on the gaps that aren't in the root text. They're in the longer text, but the longer text has some other issues that need to be dealt with. I think actually the experiment wasn't that great, is the truth. So, just between you and me, I won't tell anyone, but I think that we've run some better experiments. It's the truth. Happens. But that's all about, we come together to do this session on Chenrezig every 2 months. And I'll just say, it's challenge. From a teaching side, it's challenge. How many times can you do it so that it's interesting to you, the teacher? Because if it's not interesting to you, the teacher, and you're trying to make it helpful for the people who have been doing it every other month, and if you do it too rote, it's kind of boring. Everybody goes to sleep. And you know that because you can hear the snoring, and if it's too, I think if I'd thought about it a lot more, really sat down and kind of choreographed it, which sometimes I do if I think it really needs it, or if I have the time, I think I would have said, I don't think this is a good approach here. So I apologize for that. I think it was just not quite there.
I thought today was
Oh, great.
was really horrible.
That's it. Thanks, Steve.
It wasn't just bad.
He was waiting for that.
That we can live with.
No, actually, I thought it was good.
Yeah, me too.
Well, it was good for me,
I thought it
Well,
was
I'm
great.
glad.
but I mean good in the sense of the approach when I first thought I was eating breakfast, and I thought of it, and the night before I'd made some notes, and then I'm eating breakfast, and then I'm thinking like, oh, this would be good. It's good for me in the sense of I'm looking at it and thinking, this is an intriguing approach. Let's do this. But then starting it here, it felt a little bit like maybe people who had done it a lot, it would be good. But for those who had not done it very much at all, I think maybe it was a challenge. Too much of a challenge.
Yeah, I wondered that when you were doing that, how much it was sinking in for everyone.
Yeah.
If I could add to that part, when stuff like that
As long as you agree
happens-
with me, that's all.
maybe not. Depends how you hear it. Whenever I like seeing things like that because it gave other lessons, such as, I think you used the word iterative, as in
Intuitive, yeah.
iterations, as in
Iteration.
it layers on itself over time. It's almost like laying down a patina of got a little bit, got a little bit, got a little bit, got a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So to me, this was a living, breathing example of I got a little bit, I got a little bit more. Oh yeah, and I don't, and I'm in a place where I don't know. That's good. because of your strong repeating this morning about you use different words and which are losing me right now. But essentially the absolute and the provisional.
Definitive.
Yeah. So the provisional and the definitive, and so it was just it permeated this with it's provisional and it's iterative, which. I don't know the man who first asked the
Phil.
question.
Phil.
Phil, when Phil first asked his question, and it's like, Yeah, and when I can't visualize it that quickly and we flowed on, that itself feels good to experience. Just that being in a stream and it's flowing. But it also had that other niggle in the back of my mind that says, with growing familiarity, it will come. But it will also go and they'll come. It'll go and come. An experience that doesn't do exactly like or quite what you hoped had this other bonus of I got to experience this other aspect more fully. So I liked it for those reasons.
So what are you gonna do next?
Come and find out.
Well, one time you said you were.
That's 2 months away.
2 months away.
Yeah.
I want to be alive by then.
That's 2 months
Many
away.
months ago, you said you would explain more about the deer skin, and so you did today.
Deer
You
skin.
did?
Yeah,
A little bit. He didn't
I don't
tell the
recall that,
story.
but yeah,
Tell the
I think there was a little
deer
bit.
skin story. Goodness.
It was a little bit.
You wanna tell us more about that deer skin?
You want to hear that story, don't you?
I do. I
Was
like
that that
the deer
extinct
story.
deer that was the last deer of that kind, and Chinrezig killed it and put it on his neck?
Wow, that's a different story.
Oh, see, I haven't heard that
That's a new story.
Talk about fabricating.
Which was the last?
one. Was he hungry, so he killed the deer and ate
Little
it?
deer too.
No,
That
this
was a
Bam.
crazy story.
is the Disney version.
It's a bad Disney. That makes him evil. No. The deer that sacrifices itself.
You want to tell that story again, Bill?
Yeah.
It's a great
that
story.
Bill. Well, the deer.
He's-
that-
Why doesn't Zoe tell? She's the one who's excited.
Well, I don't know. I want to hear it. I want to be the kid.
We used to wonder about it, and people would ask questions, and we never had a really good answer. And then Bill went and researched it, and found a
Yeah, that's about that deer.
good story anyway.
Yeah.
The story is that there's in ancient times everything always happens long ago and far away, except that long ago and far away is actually happening right now in our minds. So long ago and far away right now,
That's good.
there's a deer whose propensity in the forest, whenever it hears the sound of any kind of conflict or aggression, that it goes to that sound, and wherever there are parties in conflict, it actually steps in between the two, regardless of what the consequences are for itself. To just to absorb that aggression, pacify that. And so one of the things in traditional societies, and it's not just Tibetan societies or Indian, that often they ascribe particular potency to different kinds of animals as representations of different kinds of things. And so there was a tradition of if you had the pelt of that animal, it said, well, you also had that particular power. And so Chenrezig has the deer skin there as a symbol of having that quality of pacifying conflict and aggression. And many of the other, if you get into Vajrayana practice, you'll find this kind of permeates other aspects of the symbolism as well. But Chenrezig didn't go out and kill the deer.
He didn't eat it because he was starving.
The last Bambi.
Yeah.
Bambi's.
Yeah. So we want to introduce that part of the story, because we want the story to have that kind of thing, but it's really this the kind of long ago and far away that happens right now. That
Yeah.
deer skin is intrinsically there. It doesn't need to be collected from somewhere and like that. So it's just that quality is intrinsically there.
There's an interesting thing that just occurs to me on that too, because you mentioned how native cultures would assume individual could assume a certain kind of power or a certain kind of something special by virtue of having an animal. And then what entered my mind was that that actually works both ways. Like if you've killed a bear and you have the bear thing, then I'm afraid of you because you've got that power. You know, it's like it's not only it goes both ways. Like everybody kind of gets it. So if you got the deer skin, then maybe actually you approach the conflicted people, and they see that you have the deer skin, and because they know what all that represents, they open in a way that they wouldn't otherwise if you just walked up to them. But it just occurred to me that it's actually much more, in terms of benefiting others, there's a certain benefit to having a universally acclaimed symbol, which could be you yourself under certain circumstances, like the Karmapa, like the Dalai Lama. Like if either one of them walked into this room right now, what would we do? We would not carry on our conversation, that's for sure. Something very different would happen because of our projection about them. So I just noticed that passing.
All the aspects of the appearance of Chenrezig have that.
Yeah.
They're
Can you say something about that, given the retreat, or is that
well.
verboten?
It's very similar to what you were talking about this morning in terms of the four immeasurables. Just that's probably the easiest thing to grasp as a symbol. But any of the different pieces, that if we were to be with somebody who you just knew immediately that, oh, here is somebody who has incredible equanimity, and it's not forced, it's not fake, and it goes in a really deep way where there's profound caring, there's profound compassion, and seems to be complete skill and resourcefulness in this. We would just be immediately know that if we really. But for us to recognize that, sometimes we need some help, and so the appearance of Chenrezig with four arms in this case is a way to demonstrate that. So you see that, and then you recall that. All the different elements in the appearance of Chenrezig are like little ways for us to become familiar with kind of the qualities of how the activity of how enlightened activity actually manifests. So when we see the jewel and we think about the resourcefulness, the kind of the profound capacity for providing what is precisely needed, we can appreciate that as a quality of how enlightened activity manifests. So all of these things are ways to introduce us into this, and they're all embodied in the direct appearance. There's no aspect of Chenrezig that is kind of wasted appearance. Everything demonstrates how enlightened activity actually manifests. Just the appearance, that sense of if you were in the presence of a being, that where they just sat there and that you just felt this room is filled with a kind of a very clear and calm sense, very, very alive, but completely free of any kind of disturbance or aggression. Just the basic appearance. So when we study all the aspects of, sometimes it's referred to the pure meaning, when we study those over and over again, we come to some kind of appreciation for how enlightened activity manifests. And the 4 arms and one, every element in it has something that we can relate to on different levels. The 4 immeasurables we can relate to on a very ordinary level. And the more that we study them, the more that we cultivate them, the more we see them on internal levels. And the more we can see them as actually things that naturally manifest from the recognition of the nature of mind. Not sort of extra stuff that you do. It's just part of what's there.
What about the jewels and ornaments?
Those are they fall. The particular ones have particular meanings, but overall these are they will either relate to the qualities of the Sambhogakaya, manifestation of that. Michael mentioned this morning the 5 Buddhas, the 5 wisdoms. So those are all, they're all manifest, they're all things. And those are elements that are actually something that are not obvious on the surface. If somebody walks up to you with a plate full of the kind of cookies that you really like, and you remember that in passing 2 years ago, you mentioned that you really like this kind of cookie, you just like, wow, that person is incredibly thoughtful. We immediately, just in an outer way, we recognize a kind of a kindness, a concern, a recollection, a wish to connect. But there are other things that are more subtle, and it's only when we start to look into our experience in a more subtle way that we start to recognize these qualities. And many of the ornaments of Chenrezig refer to that aspect of resourcefulness.
So I have a question about those too, because when I learned Thousand Arm Chenrezig, those were the jewels and ornaments related to the 6 paramitas. It's not so with the jewels and ornaments on this Chenrezig. Never heard the 6 paramitas as the jewels. Like that, this being has perfected all the 6 perfections.
That's also in there amongst the qualities.
Okay.
So
I just
different,
wondered.
even different forms of Chenrezig.
Yeah.
If you look at in the extended sadhanas, they'll actually go through the pure meaning
It's just more.
and in more detail, and even different forms of Chenrezig, the same thing,
Yeah.
can have a different quality pointed out. So
Yeah.
this is one of those cases, and with
Four-arm,
four-arm
thousand
Chenrezig,
arm.
often the mantra is pointed out as the manifestation of the 6
The
paramitas.
6 perfections,
Yeah.
the 6
The
syllables.
6 syllables.
Okay.
That's one of the layers there, and it could there.
Yeah.
It's not on the top of my head that the ornaments were particularly
Yeah.
related to the
Yeah.
6 paramitas, though. I think at some point this morning you said something along the lines that, well, any element of this, if you look into it, you could kind of see all of the Dharma.
Connect.
And so if you look into the qualities of the Sambhogakaya, you will
Yeah.
pretty quickly you'll trip right over the 6 paramitas.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting exercise to try and see those things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I don't see them naturally usually. It's like I have to try.
Yeah.
to see it. But I think that, and in some areas it's easier than others, but it's like the easy ones are things like the 6 paramitas. You can see where all of the path of the Bodhisattva, all of the teachings on bodhicitta, how where they came from. You just see the root of it in that. And the same is true with the 4 measurables and others too. But I can remember one teacher saying, "There's no element of the Dharma which does not contain the entire Dharma." And of course, in a kind of literal sense, like we have one letter of the alphabet, and does it contain the entire Dharma? And of course, we have the example of Dilgo Kensei, who came, as far as I know, the closest I ever heard to somebody saying, "Yep, it's all there."
It's all in the book.
Well, his thing was take any letter out of a Dharma teaching, but it doesn't have to be in the Dharma teaching. It could just be a letter, and somewhere at some time that letter appears in the name of a Buddha, and that's all he needed. That was it. Then the whole thing, like any alphabet, anything written, was sacred. And I thought, that's a marvelous view. It's an amazing view. You could just say, that is the most idiotic, stupid thing I've ever seen. I use newspaper from the bottom of my parakeet cage. But if you took it from the perspective of, I wonder what that looks like, really, then you get this sense of just unbounded appreciation, literally for all appearances. Not even just for one thing, just all appearances.
Every letter.
Because where do the appearances come from? They all arise from the Dharmakaya, right out of emptiness, which is the very nature of mind itself. So therefore, done. It's just like,
So parakeet poo.
even.
Yeah. So
It's,
there you go.
it's very hard to move around functionally in the world with that view.
Yeah.
And yet,
Yeah.
the Buddha was not renowned for being a dysfunctional person.
No,
Quite the
very
opposite.
organized.
So
It's hard to move around holding that view in a conceptual way.
Yeah, that's it.
Because we are trying to do the thing that we're always doing, which is try everything, to understand everything by having a story about it. And in this case, now we need to have an infinite number of stories and cram them all into a little spot, and our heads go, there's a big, that's you pop the tire, and it doesn't work. So, but it's because we're trying to sort it out by having more and more and more ideas, as opposed to seeing it essentially from the inside out.
That's good.
And the concepts just drop you off at some point. I mean, you can't go there conceptually.
No, it's not. It's
You're
actually
gonna
not
be
necessary.
within the box. Not necessary.
It's not
And
necessary.
not possible.
Yeah. But when we say that, it sounds like, oh, then ideas are bad, and then we have to get rid of ideas, or but we don't actually even understand the potential for ideas, because we see them from a limited perspective.
There's somebody back here.
It was just on that, instead of it being an explosion of stories, I'm going back to one of the first things I heard you say, which was, it might have been when you were given the Bodhisattva vow teaching a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
And you were putting it out there. What if we walk down the street and everyone we pass, well, is he the Buddha? Is she the Buddha? And then it just becomes real simple.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But it's also what we're practicing here when the light goes and comes in, and we become Chenrezig and we see everybody else's Chenrezig.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, we try it on in a way, it's getting the feel of what it's like to ride the bike with training wheels. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I get a feel of it, a little teaser feel of it. what that would be like if you were the Buddha, you were the Buddha, you were the Buddha.
But those experiments happen just like that.
Yeah,
It's not some giant elaborate thing.
yeah.
And that's where it starts to become workable to see how we could look into, you have a few keys like that. Anything can be a key like that.
Yeah.
And we don't need to try to use all the keys at once, because they're infinite.
No,
So
and
we
that's
just
it.
pick one.
That, is he the Buddha, is he the Buddha, is she the Buddha, is a real simple little,
That's just
that
one
just
key.
pops up. Yeah,
One key.
real simple to pop up.
Savage.
Talking of symbolism, I was reading Bokar Rinpoche's book on Chenrezig, and in there, at one point he says the genesis of Chenrezig. He says he's talking about Amitabha. He says out of one eye a teardrop fell,
Yeah.
and that became Chenrezig. Fine. What was interesting was that out of his other eye, another teardrop fell, which became Green Tara.
Mm.
What's the significance of that?
You see, the problem here is now you have two keys.
And we want to compare and contrast keys.
I have, received an initiation of Green Tara, but I don't do the practice. I know when I went up to, I had a one-on-one with Kenpo when I went up to Mirik, and he actually gave me a book on Green Tara. But I still don't practice it. I don't have a relationship to it. So when I read that in the book, I kind of wondered, is there something about a balance? Is there the two of them, Amitabha looks on sentient beings and he sees so much suffering, he says, I've got to do something about it. He's a Buddha to manifest, right? So he creates Chenrezig. But what are Green Tara? I mean, does she balance Chenrezig? What form of enlightened activity does she do?
I don't know about the balance piece. I mean, I suppose that there's a balance, but I've actually never heard that. And the teardrops, there's a lot of examples in the Tantra of deities coming from teardrops and things. And what the significance of that is also, I don't feel like I have a hard conceptual hold on what that all is. So it's a little hard to say. But Green Tara is known for the eradication of fear. A sense of safety, you could say, but safety maybe trivializes it slightly. Because here we're really talking about if you propose, if you start at the place that hope and fear are the two kind of great icons of delusion, hope and fear, the push and the pull, are in a sense, they're the real icons of samsara and confusion, and their absence is also the icon of full realization. Then you could think, well, here's Green Tara's role, the eradication of fear. You can't actually eradicate fear completely without eradicating the hope, because they're really the same two sides of a coin. I'm afraid that something's going to happen, and the fear here is more like, I'm afraid I won't actually attain realization, or I won't actually become enlightened. And on the other side, I hope I do, but I'm afraid that I won't. and out of that mixture then comes a lot. But beyond that, and the fact that there is a kind of synergy amongst the Yidam practices and all of our practices, I'm not really sure what the specific answer to your question is. Practice. You could say, well, of course Khenpo's crying, you didn't take the book and practice.
I was thinking a little along that line when you said, I don't have a relationship to this practice.
Yeah.
Yet Khenpo Rinpoche handed you a book, and now you're asking a question. You already have a relationship. The question is, what will you do with it? This is like someone's already invited you to dinner, but you decide if you're going there.
I shouldn't have asked this question.
Yes, you should. See right there.
And you knew that in advance.
Are you denying the relationship to lunch? I like to teach you, but you have the relationship. You can decide, are you developing it or not?
These things are
How
so,
you develop it.
Yeah,
on the one hand, it's really simple. You develop it by doing it, right?
Yeah.
You do it.
yeah. That's
And if you don't like it, do it some more. It's like, it's like real relationships.
Yeah, you don't. We don't like them every minute. So the three wisdoms, read a little about Tara, there's all kind of books.
Yeah.
Contemplate, gee, Khenpo gave me that, interesting, and then meditate, just a little, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
You're
There's a-
doomed. You're
You have to be a little careful because there's more written about, I think more written
Yeah.
about Tara than anything else.
Yeah,
It's like,
that's
there's just
true.
like tomes written on Tara. They're the kind of books you pick up and you say, oh my God, why did I waste the time going to Pals to get this? It's like really, and some of it's very esoteric. A lot of heavy ritual around Tara. And I would say you probably can't learn those things really without having a teacher who really specializes in that and can teach it. Like all the practices, you could say, but I've tried reading some really big texts on Tara a long time ago. I just found like, whoa, this is it's an exercise. But when it was all done, I looked at it and thought like,
I can't remember.
this guy's,
Venerable
Can't do it.
Thupten Chudran has a quite good paperback called How to Free Your Mind. And it's about Green Tara. It's not too ritualistic, but it explains the sadhana and who's Tara and what's the qualities, that kind of thing. How to Free Your Mind. It's quite available. It's on Amazon. So, from a number of her talks. And I think she's got quite a close relationship with that deity. So,
Do you still do that here at KCC, Green Tara?
what's that?
Green Tara practice, do you still do
On
it?
Yes.
the second and fourth Tuesday
Yeah,
at 6:45,
6:45.
but there's no teacher involved. Just Tara, just Green Tara.
There's another piece that should be thrown in to balance this subtle implication here that you really ought to be doing Green Tara.
No, you don't.
yeah,
A subtle implication.
a subtle implication.
To balance that, I would say, because you started with the idea of balance, one of the things that Khenpo Rinpoche has said in all the Yidam seminars that he's led for people who have gone through the Saman Winter program, that he's gone on for like 5 minutes listing all the other kinds of practices and specific practices and saying, but they're all embodied in this practice. That's also embodied in this practice. This is also, so if you really do this practice, these are all embodied in it. So you say, well, you could say, okay, I don't have a relationship with this practice that makes me want to engage in it instead of what I'm doing. That's fine. But you can have the confidence that whatever practice that you do actually embodies all the other practices. So you can approach it with that. So instead of having a kind of a divided mind and a divided sense of confidence, you can have confidence that within whatever practice I am doing, there is all the other practices are embodied within me. The only caveat that I would add is that if you're only doing shamatha practice, that you would have to actually add insight practice with that. But doing both of those together. And usually we need to also make relative bodhicitta explicit in our practice too, even though it's implicit in the union of those two.
Thank
But
you.
everything, whatever other practice like Chenrezig, whether it's Chenrezig or Tara, which chair you like, doesn't matter.
Which dear?
The other one's implicit in the other.
Was that a hand or two fingers?
I remember when the Karmapa miscellaneous came in 2008 to Seattle. I think I remember, at least this is what I heard, which was that he was talking about himself, in a very down to earth and a very personal way, a very human way, and he was talking about his childhood and how his mother used to do the Shinrezi mantra pretty much constantly. He thought maybe that had something to do with who he was or who he came to be. And he also said that people in his village would go deer hunting, and that broke his heart. That there was something about, he knew himself to be a compassionate being because he remembered when he was a child that he had that compassion rise up around the killing of deer. So I always think of that also with regard to the deer skin and the way that, I always link those things, and it's a fabrication and provisional, but I always link them. And the way in which compassion kind of comes from suffering. That having the experience of great suffering is connected to the experience of great compassion somehow. So that's what I was thinking about in terms of the deer. In addition to the story about the pacifying aspect of it, is the Karmapa's compassion.
There is a little tag end to the deer story that I heard differently than what Bill told. All of that, but that when it came down to it in a relative manner in a story, two hunters are about to shoot each other with arrows over a dispute, and the deer sacrifices itself right when the arrows are shot and takes the arrows. I mean, that's implicit in the story he told, but explicitly, then that's the deer skin that Chenrezig is wearing. So it's not just a kind of a deer spirit, but the deer physically walks in. And then I immediately had this, when you said right now, long ago and far away right now, I was at a demonstration downtown and two guys started screaming at each other, which happens, in demonstration. And I can't even remember what demonstration, but let's just say this war is good, this war is bad. And they're doing this, and they're really getting worked up. And I was standing about 5 feet back thinking, gosh, I wonder if there's anything I could do. but feeling quite confused and a little scared. And all of a sudden, this person, dressed kind of like a clown, walked through in between them, smiling. They were screaming and close to blows, and walked through smiling at each of them and went and hit this bell like 3 times and was inches from them. They were closer than this, and they were completely thrown off their stories. They were just like, what were we screaming about now? And I thought the deer going in between. And clearly that person was walking around the protest doing just that. Like wherever there was all this verbal stuff, I kept watching him. He was dressed very silly and being very sweet and just going in between, dinging a bell. And I thought, oh my God, Chenrezig, right now. I mean, who'd have thought? I couldn't think of anything that creative. But there it was. It was very funny.
We need to pass out more red noses and bells.
Yeah, dress up like a clown. Anyway, that worked. Right in between the conflict. And it melted. They didn't know what to do, so they turned and walked away. So,
That would have been fun to see.
yeah, it was great. I'll never forget it. So, it shows up anywhere.
Michael, is it okay to make things up the way that
Make things up?
I talk about making things up here. I'm making things up because I heard something and I pulled that thread into my story or my conception of Chenrezig. Is that okay to do?
Can you give an example?
Well, you know,
Which you just said.
what with regard to the you know the way that I might think about some aspect of Chenrezig, for example, the deer skin, in kind of a way that I've made up. You know,
The story.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that I think that if I were doing the sadhana and I decided I was going to do it a different way, my own way, that I think there might be an issue with that, you know, because the
So where do you imagine the issue would come from?
Putting too much confidence in the machinations of my own mind,
So,
relative mind.
so the issue's coming from you, right?
Well, I'm wondering if there's an issue that would come from you.
That's what I was thinking.
Really good.
I'm wondering whether or not you can get him to buy into it, or whether
Oh, no.
This is a new way to do Chenrezig, right?
Yeah,
whatever I can get away with.
Yeah, I'm wondering if when you hear, you know, me say that, oh, this is the way I think about the deer skin, is that okay with you? You know, are there any red flags for you in that? Because I guess the question comes from wondering myself.
Yeah.
You know, if that.
Well, and that's I think the place to look. Like whether or not I'm going to have a problem with it is actually not the most effective place to look for the thing.
Well,
because
whether you would think I'd have a problem.
I only think one thing around this, and I think it's a critical aspect of our practice, but on the other hand, I think it can also be like an upset apple cart really easy too, and that is that we all make changes to our practice from time to time. Sometimes very subtle, sometimes combining what we've heard from two different teachers, you know, it's like, but the risk there is that we lose confidence in our practice. That's the risk. As far as I know, that's the main risk, is that we lose confidence. And that confidence is critical because inevitably if we're really engaging in the practice regularly, we will come to a place where we have to rely upon the teaching as we heard it, and as we feel confident that we heard it that way, and that that's what we really got. We have to rely on that, and if the degree to which we have manipulated the practice, if we have, our confidence is compromised. And I remember on long retreat, on a couple of occasions, Lama Tsatsing said, you lose your confidence, you're done. You're not permanently done, but you can't move through the difficult stuff, which is actually where everything that's really important happens. Right? The easy stuff is just the easy stuff. When you get into really difficult stuff, the confidence in the practice, we could say the confidence in the teacher, but even without that, if you can be confident in the practice, then you can move through it. Otherwise, you may discover that you've made some changes, and at a certain point, if we have that habit, we can't even remember what we changed, and so the whole thing gets like a leaky boat. So that's my main thing. It's not about anybody changing things, because I think everybody changes things. I mean, like we have received teachings from lineage holders, and we've made alterations to things from time to time, which probably have always felt like this is not a problem. Like, for example, taking a little short break in the middle of the practice. So one might say, like, that's not a problem, so you need to have a little short break. But actually, I never got that teaching from Kala Rinpoche or Boka Rinpoche. He may have given it. They may have both given it to somebody, but I never heard it from him. But I felt like that's enough. I think I understand it enough to make that without compromising my sense of confidence in it. But the point is just that it's tricky territory. It's just tricky territory. And I think in the past I've made the most compromises in practices that I didn't like. And guess what? I'm still not doing those practices. But some of those practices might be exactly what would be the best thing for me to be doing. And if I met somebody who I felt great confidence in, and they might say, you need to do that, and I think like, oh yeah, then I might go and do it. This is just human stuff, right? So we want to be careful, treat the instructions that we get as if they're like a precious jewel. And somebody once said to me, you don't want to inherit a very valuable diamond, and you're not a diamond cutter, but you decide you're going to be one, and so you completely destroy the value of the diamond by learning how to cut the diamond. I think that there's some cross analogy there. Just be careful.
I just brought two quotes to my mind. One was just somebody saying best advice they ever got from Trungpa was that everything depends on how much you trust your own experience. And so I don't know about definitely trusting the teachings and then trusting your own experience. I guess finding a balance there. And then the other one was somebody saying that all the best writing throughout history has always been misreadings of previous writing. So I tried to wrap my head around that last month, but
That's pretty good.
Oh, yeah. That's the balance somehow.
I don't know, the original works were sometimes pretty good.
the same guy says said that the originals were not original, or some guy said the originals were not original, but then he retracted that when it came to Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Retracted that statement.
He was the least original of all.
He was the least original.
Nobody would have understood him if he was truly original.
Right, if you're truly original, no one understands you. That's good.
That's true. It's anathema. You can't possibly understand.
You said this morning, like, if you really looked completely different, not only would people not pay attention, they might try to kill you.
Right, if you're really truly original, that might happen too. What is it? Get rid of it.
The painted bird.
One of the thoughts that I have, when you're thinking about the associations that you have with the story, it's if you see a deer and you recollect that story, there's nothing that's problematic there. If you see Chenrezig and you actually recollect that story, we have all kinds of recollection and associations, and some of them are positive reinforcements of things. I think the problem arises if we transfer that story to be the, quote, real meaning of the deer, and lose track of the other component, which is that quality of not just compassion, but that kind of the active, even at the risk to life. Thinking about that quality. So if we lost that piece of it, it would feel like, that was not quite it.
Okay, who's got the cricket in their pocket?
It's not my cricket.
The pet cricket.
That was my cricket.
It was Bill's cricket.
Shall we take a break and come back and do a session and finish up? Oh yeah.
By this
virtue
May I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.